Bienvenido a The Talks, el podcast de la Fundación MOP, una serie de conversaciones con figuras imprescindibles de la creación contemporánea, un espacio para detenernos, escuchar y descubrir nuevas miradas. Gracias por acompañarnos.
Well, thank you all for that lovely long applause. And thank you very much, Letizia, for inviting me to be in conversation with David Chipperfield here this evening. I'm Alice Rawsthorn, and I'm delighted to join you all at Fundación MOP this evening. And in the conversation with David, we're going to talk about the future of two phenomena that are very close to his art. One is design, and the other is, of course, Galicia. David is undoubtedly one of the leading architects of our time. He was brought up on a farm in southwest England and studied architecture in London in the 1970s before working for the preeminent British architects of that era, Norman Foster and Richard Rogers. He opened his own office, David Chipperfield Architects, in London in 1985. One of his first projects was a family home for his friend, the photographer Nick Knight, who of course spoke here last week. Now a global practice with offices in London, Berlin, Milan, Shanghai, and Santiago de Compostela, David Chipperfield Architects has won over 100 international awards for the design excellence of its projects, including the Neues Museum and Neue National Gallery in Berlin, Museo Jumex in Mexico City, and Kunsthaus Zurich. Its current projects include the London School of Economics Global Hub and the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. David himself is the recipient of numerous awards, from the coveted Pritzker Prize for Architecture, a knighthood in the UK, and the Premium Imperiale in Japan, to one of his favourite prizes, Galician of the Year, in 2019. Now, David and his family discovered and fell in love with Galicia over 30 years ago. Having spent their summers here for many years, he established Fundación RIA in Santiago in 2017 as a non-profit research and action institute focusing on the economic, ecological, and cultural development of the region. A few weeks ago, he opened Casa RIA in a late 19th century building, a former sanatorium in the heart of Santiago, to house the foundation, David Chipperfield Architects Santiago office, a public exhibition space, and the already hugely popular restaurant A Cantina. So we're going to begin our discussion with a whistle-stop tour by David on his work as an architect so far and his perspective on architecture internationally and here in Galicia. Over to you.
Thank you, Alice. I want to just, before we have a chat, which is the most comfortable way of explaining one's work, I just want to explain a little bit about this apparent shift in my interests from, in a way, conventional architectural practice to what we're doing here, and why that shift, apart from the fact that I'm getting older and less patient with other things. This is an image of Doha. It could be an image of many other places, and it shows an array of architectural objects, and it shows very clearly the idea that cities are being built, are being shaped, not by what you and I might want our cities to feel like, the conventional structures of cities in terms of buildings that have clear domestic or institutional or cultural requirements, or the construction of streets and squares, but by the forces of investment. So this is a very, in a way, it's a slightly easy shot, but it's explicitly demonstrating what we all know, is that our world is increasingly shaped by the forces and investment and global forces of investment. it's also being shaped by a sort of unforeseen and consequential lack of planning and lack of vision. We're building large parts of our world. This is housing, but it's not a community. There's no, you can't see a street there. You can't see a school or a shop. We're not building communities anywhere. We're not building an environment. And of course, this has been happening for the last 30 years in an increasingly fast way, and continues to happen. But being positive, I would say now there's an understanding, because of the problems of sustainability and resources, because of the fact that we are creating a world of financial inequality, and that these types of towns and cities are not protecting or not helping either of those issues. They're environmentally, dangerous, and socially, they're certainly not improving quality of life and dealing with those issues. And therefore, as architects, we are having to think about that more, because the building industry is very, very, makes a big contribution to our carbon footprint and the use of resources. Where does that put us as architects? Do we become urban planners and sociologists? Not necessarily. Of course, as architects, we believe in architecture. We believe in the power of making beautiful things, buildings which have purpose, buildings which contribute to the environment, that have physical values, spatial values, material values, and social values. So I haven't got to the point where I don't, I've lost confidence in the power of architecture, but rather what we do with this. And clearly architecture, so I'm showing images just to, in a way, show that there is an architectural side to, our practice. But, I believe in making good spaces for people, for things, making good architecture, and in the way that one makes these buildings. Clearly, they are not meant to be arbitrary shapes. They're meant to have some meaning. In the case of Humex, the question was how to create from a private institution and a private collection a public building, how to make it contribute to the city. And this is really what one is looking for all the time in architecture. In conventional architecture, we spend our time trying to think, what can the building give back? In the case of Vélez Events in Valencia, the America's Cup building, the mayor wanted an icon, and we were interested in thinking about how could that building promote in a very social and very public way the use of this building, which was potentially an exclusive building. How could it become, a sort of a hub in the sort of spectacle and the ongoing publicness of this place, and at the same time trying to create a better relationship between Valencia and the sea. Buildings have a responsibility to not only be what they want to be, but also to acknowledge the context in which they are built. One of the difficulties modern architecture has, but I would say modern life has, is how do you integrate the contemporary with the pre-existing? So this is in Innsbruck, in one of the most important streets. We built a modern building, but you're always trying to find ways by which these buildings might integrate, or in Berlin, where we've been working 20 years on the cultural buildings of the Museum Island, trying to find a way by which you integrate by understanding the context. You integrate new buildings, not by mimicking historical buildings, because we can't recreate those qualities, but by making a modern architecture or modern interventions which are sympathetic to context. So why you're looking for reasons why buildings are like they are. Now, in some conditions, this is an office building in Korea, headquarters for MOP Pacific. The clues are not quite so obvious, but clearly you have opportunities to consider what makes a good working environment for people who are spending so much time in their office. So, this client, it was very much, there was a lot of conversation about how we could make this a convivial place for people to work, and something that improves their daily quality of life. This is slightly out of order, but this is the Noise Museum in Berlin, where I suppose not only was it a complicated project intellectually and technically, but it was also a project which exposed me and my team to conversations about meaning, because this was a restoration of a war ruin. So it came with an enormous dialogue with the community. And in this, I learned the merits of collaboration, of participation, that I learned how the architect is not the singular author, but that the architect has to collect together, give voice to others, and concentrate these forces in a common path. And this was a very formative project in that way, because of the complexity of it. It was extremely politically complex. Increasingly, we are working with renovating existing buildings. This was the old Ministry of Interior in Doha, converted now to a hotel, Ned Hotel. This was an old complex of buildings in Germany, where we converted them into the headquarters of a small family company, showing how you can protect what's there, stabilize what's there, elaborate what's there, and add, and out of this combination of understanding the history of something and the potential that you might create something new out of the old. But fundamentally, architecture is something that has responsibility to create a better place for us. I fundamentally believe that architecture used in the right way can improve our daily qualities of life. Now, that's not only in a museum, but it's designing streets, it's making squares, it's about public space, but also housing and schools and things like that. And I think that that's something which, as a profession, we're starting to understand much more about our overall responsibility. We will talk about that, and this is the interface between sort of architectural discussion and Galicia. This is our house in Cordobedo, which we built 20 years ago, and this is the view from that. And this is my view of Galicia, which is, of course, a very edited view of Galicia, but in a way it represents a slightly romantic celebration of what we have, what attracted us, which is the extraordinary nature, the importance of nature, not only as something to look at, but that it's a part of its productive economy in terms of fishing and farming and forestry, and also as part of the the culture, and on top of that, I would say the other aspects that we enjoyed so much was the sense of community which exists in a small village like Cordobedo. And I think that's the introduction to our chat.
Well, and lovely to begin it with a celebration of romance, and what a view. So how did you discover Galicia initially?
It was an accident. I was in a conference in Milan, and there was another architect. Most people wouldn't know him, Manolo Gallego, who extraordinarily important architect in Galicia, and he was saying, we had 3 very small children, and realized we had 20 years of summer holidays in front of us, and he said, you should bring them to Galicia. So we did. We came to Cordobedo and then stayed.
And why did you find Galicia so engaging, and why has it continued to intrigue and engage you over the years? Well, apart from the beautiful view.
I think from our perspective, so we live in London most of the time, Berlin some of the time. And of course, London in the last 30 years, as you well know, has been a very exciting city, full of excess and success and money and aspirations. And I think it was very sobering to be in a community where, to put it simply, there was a sort of sense of reality. It's very difficult for me to talk in front of you because you're all Galician, so everything I say about you is obviously either over-respectful or under-respectful. But I think what we enjoyed and still enjoy is that the quality of life here is not the same as it would be in London, which is slightly artificially suspended. In other words, you have to buy quality of life in London. And increasingly you have to buy it, and increasingly it's more expensive. So in order to live a comfortable life in London, you have to be on a very ferocious financial wheel. And it was reassuring to be in a community where, I'm not saying that financial ambition doesn't exist, but that there is a certain quality of life that comes out of the general daily realities. The enjoyment of place, enjoyment of other people, a certain sense of society, and a sort of, that the place itself seemed to give everybody a basic quality of life. And that seemed to me, increasingly, as we move towards understanding better and better the problems of consumption and the fact that what we're doing to our world, how we're destroying our world, in some ways is because of the fact we are consuming so much. We're not being careful enough with our resources. It seems to me that Galicia offers quite a good perspective about how to be more modest with ideas of quality of life.
And Galicia has, of course, provided the location for a project that's been of great importance in enabling and empowering you to embrace the changes in architectural practice and the changes in our economic, political and social reality that you've alluded to, and that's the foundation of Fundación RIA. in Santiago. So how and why did it begin?
I suppose that obviously we came here for holidays. We came here to relax. But the more time I spent here, the more I got irritated by seeing not, on the one hand, you're stimulated by seeing this, and on the other hand, you're sort of frustrated by seeing this. And you're even more frustrated when you know that it used to be that. And so while I'd like to come here and just sail and swim and cook, my sort of professional part of my brain, couldn't be totally ignored. And but as a holidaymaker, I didn't really have to worry about it. But there was a point when the previous president, Alberto Feijó, asked me as an outsider, said, what should we do about this? How can we stop this happening? And I said, well, I've got no idea, but, let me think about it. He wanted me to sort of make some sort of advice about architecture. And I think his thought was that what Galicia needs is a sort of handbook, that you should only build in these materials, all windows should be these 4 colors, roofs should have this type of tiling or whatever. And so we came back and said, well, it's a bit late for that. And actually, I'm not so convinced that it's architecture only. Isn't it just as much about that? The fact that public space is being destroyed. This is not really public space. This is portos space. I mean, those of you, we all know the issue of where does the city end and where does portos begin. And of course, there's a sort of mixed blessing. This is Ribeira, obviously. On the one hand, I love the sort of industrial reality of the port, but on the other hand, you can't ignore the fact that these towns and villages, it's not just the buildings which are eroding the quality. It's the roads, it's the traffic. So this used to be a square, and now it's a parking place, and look at all the graphics on the floor, it's all. And so it's about traffic. So then we became, when we went back, we said, no, it's not just about architecture. It's about other things. And of course, the reason as architects, I can't do anything about that as an architect. I can only do architecture. So what was interesting here, once you asked that question, then you thought, well, maybe I can look at these issues as an architect, but not with the profession of an architect, with the eyes of an architect, but actually thinking about things beyond normal architectural responsibility. Because as an architect, you're only asked to design the thing which is inside the piece of land that someone owns. So they might own that building and ask you to renovate it, but no one asks you to deal with the stuff in between. And no one's going to pay you for it. So then we started to think that if I wanted to do something different to the other offices that I run, and maybe work in a different type of way, in other words, not for any one client, but for all of us. Actually, I was working for myself. I was just saying, this really irritates me. What a nice, this is Tarragona, I think. What a nice town, and what a shitty, why would you do that? And wouldn't it be nice if we could take it away? So then we started to think about whether we couldn't operate separately. Also, we started to realize that how can you make a good town, how can you do urbanism if half the buildings are empty? That's not an issue of architecture anymore. It's not even an issue of the alcalde. This is another. So you start finding yourself in non-architectural territory, but territory which is fundamental to a solution. So this needs legislation. The traffic needs also legislation. So you need to start getting involved in things beyond conventional architectural practice. And then the question was, how do you, if administrations, and I'm not just talking about Galicia, this is the same problem everywhere. Administrations feel powerless to do this. Who is going to do it? And so therefore, we started to feel that the foundation could start to take some of these things on. And by the way, the issue is we're not really interested in traffic. We're interested in urbanism. We're interested in making towns nicer. But you can't make that town nicer without dealing with the traffic problem. So at that point, and again, you go to the Ministry of Urbanism and they say, it's not an urban problem, it's a traffic problem. You go to the traffic ministry and they say, what's the problem? You say, well, it's ruining the urbanism. So, that's not us, that's urbanism. So it falls between everybody's responsibility. So therefore, what we've tried to do with the foundation is, in a way, occupy that ambiguous territory that seems to be a gap in administration, it's a gap in... And again, I would say the reality of that is not... So you start as architects, and we start as architects and planners, and we end up involved in traffic, we end up in empty buildings, and actually you end up in issues about how do you keep young people in these towns. Because if you don't have people in a town, you don't have a town anymore. So we are now moving ourselves into a time now where we keep talking about the circular economy, but if we really believe in the circular economy and the circular society, we have to see the connection between quality of space, quality of public space, quality of work for young people, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why the foundation has sort of developed from a planning office, in a way, into a sort of agency that's looking at the connectivity between decisions which need to be made better than they are now and with more responsibility. Not because people are consciously... No one is doing this on purpose. No one is making these mistakes on purpose. And it's not a unique Galician problem. It's the fact that there's no coordination and understanding of where these...
And how has your experience of working with the foundation on issues like this influenced your personal perspective on architecture and the way you practice it?
Well, I showed the first images partly because I wanted to, in a way, bring that to the table, that it's not that I've given up architecture and said, well, let's be... The most responsible thing for an architect to be now is an environmentalist or, social planner or something. I don't think that's true. I think that architects believe in a very fundamental way that the quality of buildings, where we wake up in the morning and make our coffee or take our children, the street that we take our children to school at, the school that the children go to, the swimming pool that they go on the weekend, the physical environment both natural and man-made, is fundamental to our quality of life. That's what I was trained in thinking, and I still believe that. And therefore, this notion that as architects we've increasingly been pushed towards the designing of singular buildings. And there's nothing wrong with it. We need singular buildings, but we need the other side as well. We need the picture within which singular buildings are contributing. We need the environment. We can't just make, like that first image of Doha, you can't make a city out of single things. There has to be an idea about what a town should be about. And if you don't do that, these, actually really nice little towns, Tarragona, Palmyra, their qualities are being eroded. And it's not just how would you expect to say to young people, you shouldn't leave here, if at the same time, every year the village gets worse. And so I think it's fundamental that architecture is about, improving quality of lives. And you can't just do it within a building. And I think when you're trying to answer your question more precisely, how has it influenced our practice? I think architectural practice, all of our practice, I would say every business now is having to address the issues of responsibility in terms of sustainability and environmental concerns and social concerns. And we have to think what we are contributing both to environment and to community. So I think there's a shift in my profession, in architecture, towards these issues. And I would say the foundation has allowed my general practice, which is, as you say, 6 offices, that in a way, the foundation is at the sharp end of this shift and is doing things in a more radical way than the rest of the practice. But I would say the rest of the practice and other practices are shifting also in that direction. It's a heavier chair to shift. Not so easy to move a commercial practice only in that way. But I would say in the last 3 or 4 years, I've seen an enormous shift, not just by us, because we can't do it, but by clients.
And the latest development for the foundation and your work within Galicia is, of course, the opening of Casaria in Santiago. How will the foundation develop as a result of that?
I think one of the things that we, as a team, because we're, for many years we were 3, 4, now we're 8, but we are doing so many projects. We're being involved in so many things. I've said it before that I've spent my whole life being an architect, and being an architect often makes you quite unpopular. We're not the most loved often. And secondly, you're always having to sell you're having to sell yourself, your talents. So in order for me to get someone to employ me, I have to prove I'm better than you. My project's better than your project. So it's a very promotional and competitive profession. I would say it's been hugely relaxing and enjoyable not to be selling yourself, but the team is trying to, as it were, act in general people's advantage in some way. So what we've tried to do is to prove that we have no agenda. We have no political agenda. We have no commercial agenda, because you don't make any. This is an expensive exercise in a way. But we're there to try and do things, and it has been very rewarding, I would say, in the sense that It's probably the first time in my life I've been a really popular architect, because I'm not building anything, and therefore you're not irritating anybody. Instead, you're trying to make other things happen. It's very difficult to come to conclusions in so many of these things, and therefore Casa Ria allows us not to be able to provoke questions, but not necessarily, as it were, complete them ourselves. So what our research projects and our practical projects, there's only a certain number we can get round. But with the foundation and the public house, I think it gives us the opportunity to raise questions and discussions, promote a discussion for 2 weeks about empty buildings, how would we change the laws on empty buildings, let's say, or abandoned villages or whatever, anything. And without necessarily having to have the resources to conclude that. So it's a house of dialogue and a house of airing the issues in a very independent way, as I said before, without any commercial or political agenda. So I'm sort of confident that it will do that. And as you say, we opened it a few weeks ago. It has an exhibition space. We will have continuous exhibitions. We will have conferences, and we also have. We're trying to set up programs with research courses in other universities, in Yale, in London School of Economics, and get people from outside to come and work on the issues here. So I think there's a really interesting potential transfer of knowledge and experience that we can get from outside. Already we've got on our board people from Switzerland, from one of the best timber companies in Switzerland advising us. And so I think this idea that we can bring people together, and we can bring in a constructive way, in a positive way, to show good examples of things. I think that gives the foundation an opportunity which it hasn't had before.
And an important component of Casa Ria is, of course, the Santiago office of David Chipperfield Architects. So how does it interact with the other offices internationally and the activities of the foundation?
The David Chipperfield Architects office in the building serves two things. One is that it's an income generator, because the foundation cannot generate income. So the commercial office, the idea is that it generates income to pay, but the money doesn't leave the house, as it were. So it's it's part of its way of keeping alive. And also what we're hoping is that gradually it will become more and more engaged in projects in Galicia. Now we're about to begin a project here in Jubias, a master plan project, and that's exactly the sort of project we want to be doing.
And if we look more broadly at changes within architecture and design, the disciplines have changed radically in recent years by exploring the new challenges, the new opportunities you've talked about. Everything from advances in technology to the geopolitical turmoil we're in at this ever more ominous time. What would you identify as being the principal challenges for architecture to tackle in the future? You've already talked about the climate emergency. What are the other key issues?
I think the key issues become relevant. I think architecture has to become socially relevant again. I think it's become very detached. It's something to look at. If you look at the magazines, it's become part of lifestyle. It's about image, And I think what's interesting in a place like Galicia is that we've realized that, it has to be much more engaged. But I would say that everywhere. I think we've become very detached. And I think this is a question. I mean, we've always felt that innovation, there's a new thing coming. I've spent my whole life, looking, being part of progress. Things got better, things got more modern. The Beatles came. All sorts of things happened. We got better cars, we got better everything. And progress seemed very clear. It was always going to, things you became more efficient at doing things. And now all of a sudden we've started to realize that progress is a slightly more confusing thing than we thought it was. Even in food production, we industrialized in order to make the growing of food more efficient. In England, we made fields bigger and bigger. We got rid of small-scale farming, small-scale production. We have industrial. And now we're having to go backwards because we realized it's destroying biodiversity, it's destroying the planet. So all of a sudden, everything that we thought was progress is now being identified as being problematic. So now progress is a very complicated thing, and it's the same in architecture. We used to think it would be about inventing new materials. Now it's not. It's actually going back to old materials. Now it's going back to old things. What is the shift is the fact that we can analyze better. We can analyze data, we can analyze performance before it happens. In the old days, we had to build something to see whether it would stand up, and if it stood up, to some degree. Obviously, we got better than that. But now we can measure the consequence of things before we do them. So we can measure the effect of materials on things. We can measure how a building might perform better. We can actually go back to making more simple decisions which got lost. They were very embedded in traditional society. For instance, in building, if you go to most traditional Galician aldeas, the positioning of the houses was so clever. They knew that the rain was coming this way, they knew the prevailing wind was that way, they knew that the soil condition, and there was just there was a control of information. They knew what. In the last 50, 60 years, we've surrendered that into artificial systems. So I think we're going to have to find ways of regaining simple things. But I think it's also we've got to regain what it's about. What is quality of life about? And I think as architects and planners, we really believe that the physical place is fundamental to that, whether it's natural or environmental. And in Galicia, we have the most extraordinary nature, which is the treasure of this. It's its capital. It's its natural capital. It's like if you went to the bank with Galicia, you should be able to put a value on it. It's enormous. We used to measure, before the discussion about sustainability, all financial success is measured on, outcome, of production. But now, and therefore in those terms, Galicia has a limited, production wealth. I mean, clearly Inditex is probably, artificially boosts it. But in terms of its capital, because if you're a company, you have a cash flow and you have facilities. Well, if you see Galicia as your resource, naturally, it's enormously valuable. Therefore, Galicia needs to protect that first of all, and then it needs to go to where it always has been, which is to understand how to use it. Because you don't protect nature by protecting it, you protect it by using it in a careful way. And that's Galicia's tradition in terms of food production, forestry, and all of those things. So, what was the question?
So clearly, those are huge assets for Galicia in this new landscape, which in theory could be much more congenial and empowering to Galicia than the sort of old industrial age values were. But what makes you optimistic that Galicia can rise to the design challenges that face it, to address the problems and to make the most of all the new opportunities?
Because I think, just trying to coordinate images, and I think, first of all, just finish off the last question to some degree, that architects have to reposition themselves, and they have to come out of their studios, and we all have to reposition. At the moment, you have a talk with politicians, and they think planners and architects are stupid, and you talk to architects, and they think politicians are stupid. You talk to an alcalde, and he thinks this is stupid. And actually, it's daft, because everybody's got a point of view, and everyone's got something to offer. And so therefore, the only way you're going to solve environmental and urban and issues of protection is through engagement, collaboration, participation. And that's the thing that we do in the foundation. And again, I would say, this is not me, this is the team. My team has patience that I probably wouldn't have to spend Thursday nights in Palmyra talking to the community about slowing down traffic. We've been doing it for 6 years, and finally, I think it might happen. But you need to be, in that. And you say, what makes me confident about that? Because I think there is a growing understanding that we need to hold on to things. We shouldn't be losing so much. I think we're finding an enormous consensus in things, but at the same time, it's difficult to harness those into policy. But again, I would say, the administration it seems to be very open to wanting to understand how do we deal with some of these issues. And so in that sense, I'm very confident. In terms of the profession as well, I think one of the problems that we have in Galicia is that I would say that there's and again, this is a universal problem. There's been, in the last 30 years, a gradual erosion of respect for the professional structures, especially in planning and architecture and things like that. And I would say that the architects of Galicia are slightly frustrated by that. We ourselves realized that entering a competition here was nearly pointless, because they're so badly prepared that everything is slightly unrealistic, and therefore, if you win a competition, you've won a very bad place to, it's not worth winning. So what we've decided instead is to help the administration, to help institutions design the competition. So we, and again, this is a tribute to my architects in my team, who are all architects, they would love to be doing the competition, and instead they're making competitions so that other architects can win them. But our conversation is that we believe that we're doing much more to improve the quality of architecture by helping other very talented architects take on these commissions. And now we're on the third one. And just a call out for Marta here, that Marta Ortega's helping us now on a number of competitions, which I think is going to be really important. That we've announced the first one, but there's going to be 3 others of larger scale, where we want to show that if you create the professional circumstances, if you bring everybody together, if you bring the mayors together, you bring the community together, then you will get a good result. I mean, in a way, Alice, it goes, you've talked a lot about design process, I hope you take the opportunity after this to find some of Alice's writings, especially Hello World and what's the other book that I...
War and Peace.
No.
Design as an Attitude.
Design as an Attitude, which I think even, within the title, it tells you everything, So Alice has been pushing a lot about the idea of that, design isn't just coming up with nice shapes and nice colors. It's actually to do with the purposefulness of design. So, but I would say that, that's something that I think is very fundamental. Just continuing that in terms of the architectural culture, one of the things that we're trying to do here, so on the Schubias project, we were offered the project by, actually, I think, a rather good investor, and we persuaded them that we would lead the project, but we'd like to engage other Galician practices alongside us to do the project. So we're trying through these types of projects, both in terms of competitions, working in teams with other architects. We hope that we can demonstrate a more collegiate and collective responsibility to the sort of professional processes of planning, architecture, and these things.
And so 2 final questions before we throw it open to the audience. And the first is, if you look outside your own practice and the Foundation's work, can you give us just a couple of examples of design initiatives, whether they're architectural or from other areas of design, in Galicia that you find compelling and do give us hope for Galicia's future?
Not easy. I think you can find everywhere in Galicia really interesting and innovative companies, and of course, with Galicia above all is the home of Inditex, and what better example of innovation and commercial competence anywhere in the world. I think it's a very resourceful community from that, and I think it's full of hope from that point of view. Again, I would say that it's a community that's been challenged, and therefore, even in the architectural community, this is why I'm very adamant that it's really important to reinforce the sort of planning architectural ecosystem. That if you want good towns and good, so you have to increase the performance, and it's not down to talent. There's plenty of talent. It's to do with the conditions, and it's to do with how people are employed and the value they're given. So I can't point to anything. I just say that when this is Palmeira, where we did a bench, but a bit more than that. We're in the process of reorganizing the relationship between the town and the sea and the parking and the public space. So this is a project where we are in a town where we are really trying to work quite hard on reducing the negative impact of traffic. But again, I would say this was a project of confrontation at the beginning because it wasn't well mediated by the local administration. But as soon as you explain to everybody why you wanted to move the cars and why you wanted to do this, then then you get positive feedback and participation. So I think it's, I think if I want to, you're asking me positive, I'm super positive about Galicia. I mean, in terms of sustainability, I think it's probably one of the easiest places to make sustainable. There's no huge metropolitan centers, 70% forest, a minifundio agricultural system, a sense of community and society. Compared to other parts of Europe, I think it's got every opportunity to coordinate these in the right way. And I also think the administrations are also, wanting to contribute to this. And I think there are great examples. If you take the initiative of Pontevedra nearly 20 years ago to take traffic out of the town, I mean, this is an incredible initiative, incredible example, enormously brave, politically brave, and actually has proved to be the sort of initiative that needs to be made. It's difficult to make those initiatives, but I think increasingly, there's opportunities to get politicians and especially local administrations to participate in these initiatives on the basis that there is a deep awareness of the priorities of the local communities.
And so, as a final question, what does Galicia need to help it to realise its potential? You've presented a very compelling picture of what the possibilities could be, but in terms of, say, additional educational resources, investment, infrastructure, what would really make a tangible difference?
Well, the biggest crisis for Galicia is the migration of people from the rural to the cities and the migration of young people from Galicia to outside. I think the good thing is, given a half chance, Galicians would like to come back. And I think there's a great sense of identity from that point of view. I think the biggest challenge in terms of stopping the migration, or at least renovating the rural, which is not just an area, it's not just like a part of Galicia. In a way, it's the sort of spiritual and cultural heart of Galicia, and it's potentially a fundamental part of its economy. So the question is how to get young people to stay in the rural communities. Interestingly, for instance, in England, there's a lot of young people from London now that want to live in the country, partly because London is so expensive and that the things that used to be so attractive about cities are somehow being eroded. So therefore, and secondly, food has become sexy, So, it used to be cooking was sexy, but now even food production, which I think is much more important. It's quite easy to do that in England, where you've got these big centres who you can sell a fresh tomato and say this is a really fresh tomato. Well, in Galicia, everybody has a fresh tomato. It's not very, it's not so easy to promote that. But I think it's possible to start thinking in a much more serious way about how you might give the next generation a future in the Galicia hinterland. And that requires the government to invest in vocational training. There needs to be much more training opportunities. Everybody in the country wants to send their children to university, and what do they do? Informatica or something useless. They should be, it's interesting, if you go to Germany and Switzerland, nearly 60% of young people are doing practical training, which I was shocked by, because so they go into trades, and the trades then, you're guaranteed nearly a job after that. And that's what has to happen here. You have to develop opportunities, and by the way, not all in hospitality, because you don't want Galicia just to become a next tourist destination. That's another way of killing a community. So if you don't want that to happen, you've got to give young people other opportunities. And I think if I was to, be president for a day, that's where I would put all my effort, was to say, make training opportunities much more related to the Galician context. And part of that, I would say, design. Galicia has no design schools. And I think it's very difficult to develop, like the timber industry. What do we do with the trees here? We chop them down and make them into pulp. There's no furniture, there's no other construction industry. I mean, Finsa is trying hard now developing those things, but I think this would be an incredible opportunity for Galicia to develop. But you need to skill up the next generation, and that requires investment, pure and simple. It's not a market-led thing. It's a stimulus that the administration has to do, and so that, I think, for me, that's the fundamental shift.